Welcome to Parev TV. We have the honor and privilege to be joined by Emmy Award-winning director, the one and only Andrew Goldberg, whose documentary, the most recent documentary about Armenia, My Home, is is the buzz in the Armenian community. There's a big buzz. Andrew, this is going to be a very special documentary. Unlike the first two, which dealt with genocide and survival of the Armenian people, this seems to be having a more positive note. And I know, and I'm fascinated by the technology that was used to capture very special images. What can you tell us about the drones and the sophisticated technology you used for this documentary?
Well, a lot of you have 4K television sets. Remember when HD came out, it looked so great? And then everyone came out with 4K. Well, our cameras were 8K. So it shoots 4 times the quality and quantity, of pixels and lines and what have you, of a 4K TV. So we had the drone that we used had been released by the company that makes the best drones you can buy, pretty much, 2 days before we started shooting. And we had them Federal Express them to us because we were worried we wouldn't even get the new ones in time. The We had them prepping the older drones just in case the new ones didn't arrive,
Mhm.
but they did. And so this was probably the first documentary of any significance shot using these new drones, um, uh, to film like this. And the guys that we hired to use them, we flew them from Australia. There's
No.
probably a handful of guys. I don't want to be gender specific. Handful of people worldwide that are at this level of drone cinematography. These guys that we hired filmed Thor, the last Thor movie, Love and Thunder, and the
Mhm.
upcoming movie Mad Max. They're really the top of the game. They're very expensive, but we wanted to show Armenia with a first class,
Mhm.
really first class thing. And then our ground camera, we used an Emmy award winning superstar cinematographer named Robert Hanna, who we shot everything on what's called a red V Raptor, which shoots this amazing 8K stunning stuff. I mean, we really pulled out all the stops and wanted to make it as beautiful as we could. And so we're really happy with how it turned out.
Andrew, your life has intersected with the life of Armenians over the past decades, I would just imagine.
20 years, yeah.
And you know that we are a people who have gone through a lot of suffering, and we also believe that our story has not been heard yet. All this documentaries and all these excitement around us is basically Armenians want to be heard, want to be seen. What can you tell us about the economics, the politics, the logistics, the acrobatics that go into producing such a documentary?
Well, there's two points you raise. I feel like, not being heard and not being seen is something that I think a lot of Jews felt after the Holocaust. And I think that, when I was taking a course I'm Jewish and I took a course on the Holocaust, and this is in college, and one of the assignments was to study what was called the Forgotten Genocide. So this
Mhm.
was 1988 in Chicago. What is the Forgotten Genocide? So I looked it up. It was the Armenian Genocide, obviously. I looked it up, and it was in Encyclopedia Britannica, and it just had a few paragraphs.
Mhm.
And I remember it said that the Turks, it was faithful to the story. In Encyclopedia Britannica, as I recall, look, I was in college. I don't remember it that well. Maybe if I read it now, I wouldn't like it. But that they had killed all these Armenians and marched the rest of them into the desert to die. And I was very moved by that story. And I was very saddened that the story was that it was a forgotten genocide. And it wasn't so much that it was forgotten as it was unknown. It was because there was a government that had worked so hard to keep it a secret for
Mhm.
all sorts of reasons that we all know. Um, and so, I got my first job in public television because of that paper that I wrote. The guy said to me, "Well, we were approached by the AGBU to do this story, the Armenian Americans, on this is in 1999, right, 25 years ago. And do you know anything about Armenians?" I said, "Well, I happen to know all about the genocide." And I started listing off this stuff from my paper that I had written,
Mhm.
10 years, 12 years before. He said, "My goodness, I never met anybody who knew so much about the Armenians. You're hired." So I did this story with a real eye to the fact that this was a story that people didn't know. and we had to tell the story. And then I got very motivated by the fact that, Turkey wanted us to not tell the story.
Mhm.
And nothing gets me going more than someone trying to stop me. That was it. That was when I knew I had to do this. And I got to tell you, in a twisted way, I've enjoyed fighting back. Most
Mhm.
people don't want to pick a fight, but I've enjoyed fighting back against Turkey. They have tried relentlessly to stop me and others from telling this story. They tried to get my film, The Armenian Genocide, pulled off the air. They had senators calling PBS, all sorts of things. I'm glad PBS stood up to them, although they did it in a kind of a weird way. That was back in in 2006. But so that being said, now putting a film like this together, I feel like I've paved the way a little bit with all my films, that American media is a little bit more comfortable with the genocide because of the work that we've done.
Basically,
There you go.
a documentary such as this requires money, economics. There is politics involved. There is logistics. There is acrobatics also. I mean, you seem to do the impossible. I mean, what does it take to put it together? That's my question.
Well, I mean, you need a couple. I always say the best producer. People say I should be a producer. I really know how to tell stories, and my answer is
Yeah.
you have to know how to get films made, because telling us being there's a lot of great storytellers out there. There's not a great not there are fewer people who can get a film put together. It's very hard to put these together. It's like
Uh-huh.
mm, there's this old saying, that the ocean doesn't want your boat.
Absolutely.
You put your boat in the ocean, it's going to try and eat it up. The world does not want movies to get made there. It's fighting back. It's always pushing. Everybody that you call from a television or a film company, they're very busy. They've got 1,000 people calling them. They don't want to hear from you. People that give money don't want to hear from you. I wish. I mean, I will say that PBS has been great on this subject. I think part of the reason they've been great is that the Armenian community pledges a lot. They tend
Mm,
to, PBS responds to viewers. They don't really respond to ratings very much because they don't. It's not like PBS doesn't get big ratings. But
mm,
when a community shows up and says, "Oh, we're going to pledge or we're going to support," that's the way that the community tells them that they care. It serves the mission of public television. So public television has been very receptive
mhm.
to the Armenians. I mean, this is my fifth Armenian documentary. Fifth
Fifth.
Armenian documentary. That's a
Mhm.
lot of
Sure.
public television, and I think that because of the success of our films in the past, other films were able to get on the air. Excellent, some very good films, some maybe not as good, but the audience has always responded, and I think that that's been really really important. That's public television, but where do we go in the future? I'm always surprised that there's not 20 more documentaries being made about
Mhm,
Armenian subjects.
mhm.
There should be 100, Armenian documentaries, and I think a lot of it has to do also with, lack of funding.
Fun.
I've been fortunate that I've had people who get behind me. In
Mhm.
this case, you can see the names at the top of the film, from, Vahid Dombelekian to, Armen Avanesians and the Dodorian, United Armenian Charities, and many other foundations, and AGBU. I don't want to name them all because now someone's going to say,
Yes.
how come you didn't name me? But I love you all and thank you for funding. But at the same time, there's a lot of very significant players that don't put up funding for these types of things, and I think that they should change that. And the reason I think they should change that is that in the United States right now, all these issues are tried in the court of public opinion.
Mhm.
We need more press. I think that Artsakh could have had more. If Artsakh had more international attention on it, maybe things could have been a little bit different. It would have put a little more pressure on our government and on other European governments. Well,
Mm.
that only happens when you put pressure, and pressure comes from the media. We're not lobbying them hard enough in Washington. So how do we get more press? We got to get on TV more. We got to get in the internet more. We got to do more, more, more. It isn't from Facebook groups and posting. It's from big shows and movies and news reports and all these things. That's how you put the pressure on. I just report the fact, but the facts are strong enough in this case.
When people speak about the visual masterpiece, Armenian My Home, what was the objective? What is the goal? What is it to show us how far we have come? Is it to show the beauty of Armenia? Is it to discuss the politics? What was the aim of the documentary? What was your objective?
Well, it wasn't the politics. I mean, we
Yeah,
talked about Artsakh and the genocide because
yes.
we had to. You can't do this kind of a story without that. But no, I've done nothing but politics. I'm tired of politics. I wanted to do something celebratory, to celebrate something positive. It's like every time we want to talk about the Armenian story, it turns into this, heartbreak story because we're talking about the mass murder of 1.5 million people. Well, I knew we had to do that, but what I wanted to do was talk about rebirth,
Rebirth.
renewal, the future, celebration, what we could get excited about. I will say visiting Armenia when I was first there in the year 2000 was 24 years ago. That
Mm.
was a country that, look, I mean, when I went to visit, at the time, a guy named Robert Kacharian was in charge of the country. I went to visit him and interview him, and there, he lives in there. I don't know where I visited him, some big government building or his house or
Yeah.
something. The electricity was off and the security didn't work, and I felt like I was being shaken down by the KGB when I went through.
Yeah.
That's not a place that is what it is now. Now I don't
Mm.
know what the political leadership is like, but for the most part in Yerevan, the electricity works now. Things are on. The people are excited to be there. It's bustling. They're rebuilding. There's renewal. There's enthusiasm. There's smiling. There's a line in the film about when Vahid Berberian first goes to Armenia and nobody smiled at him. Well, you don't see that anymore. People are smiling. You see excitement. It's shaking off the ugliness of the Soviet government's oppression that broke everybody's heart for 80 years or however long that was. I mean, that was an emotionally trying time, and now Armenia is finally finding its sea legs and really growing. It's a really amazing place.
You've spoken about Armenia, I've heard you, and my question to you is, Armenia, is it east of Europe or is it west of Asia?
Ah, this is a question for this is the question of the ages. Listen, it's very much both because, and I would say it's also north of the Middle East because when I talked to Sona Margarian, our producer, who's wonderful, and everybody should write her a note and tell her how great she is just for helping us with this. She talks about how they really view Iran as a reliable ally in a lot of ways there.
Mm.
I mean, that's a very strange idea to an American, right? That Iran is
Absolutely.
a reliable ally. She talks about how easy it is to go there, how easy it is for them to come to Armenia. I years ago I met with the foreign consul from Iran. When I
Mm.
first did my first Armenian film, I wanted to go to Iran to meet the Armenians of Iran. And the guy from Iran met with me and proceeded to tell me how much Iran loves its Armenians and how much it hates its Jews. And I thought, well, this is a very interesting story. He started to tell me that, they view Jews as these, people that just want to loan you money at high interest rates and they can't be trusted, but how much it loves its Armenians and how hardworking they are and how reliable they are and what a great neighbor they are to the north. And needless to say, I never bothered to follow up with actually trying to go to Iran. I didn't think they were going to let me, and I didn't think it was wise policy at the time. But I will say this. I think it would be in Armenia's best interest to start looking for its allies in the West. I
Mm.
don't think that Turkey is not a reliable ally. Azerbaijan is not a reliable ally. Georgia is powerless, and Russia is not. Russia is a moving target. It's a bouncing ball. We believed Russia had the best interests of Armenia at heart, and then it attacked Ukraine and took its focus off of peacekeeping forces. This is not a way that this is not a foreign policy that Armenia can depend on. I would argue that America and the West are going to be more reliable and dependable, and I think that they need to start thinking about being a Singapore of the region. We need to start, guys like Sam Simonian with Tumo, that is brilliant, right? Bringing in foreign money, technology, creating economic associations with the West, with Western countries,
Mm.
and ultimately with Western governments. That to me seems to be the place of the geopolitical future. So while I don't know what Armenia's psychology is, whether it's west of Asia or east of Europe or north of the Middle East or south of Russia, whatever it is, geopolitically, I think it needs to start looking west. I think there's more power, money, and reliability here. It's not perfect, but it's better. That's my 2 cents.
Speaking about the foreign policy of Armenia, we do have a government, we have a foreign minister, and we trust them as the best as they can. They're trying to navigate through these very, very difficult times. It's easy for us to give advice. It's always easy to give advice to anybody around us, but it's not so easy, the situation in Armenia and other parts of the world. My question to you is that one of the friends asked me to ask you if these documentaries can be seen in foreign countries, and are these documentaries translated into other languages?
I'm not in charge of that. That goes to a group called PBS Distribution, and they oversee international sales and distribution and translations.
What struck you as really different in this documentary? What is something you really was new for you too?
That's a very good question. Listen, I had been to Armenia one time before for several weeks back in 2000. I mean, what struck me is how much the country has grown up, economically, intellectually. It's just really neat to see this place really thriving in a lot of ways and really, really growing. I think that the Artsakh thing was heartbreaking and tragic, and you know, I that was a real blow for me. I'm not
Mhm.
Armenian, obviously, but I didn't like seeing that one bit. I mean, I spent a lot of time in Azerbaijan and in the past, and I listened to them, and I didn't find their position particularly compelling. I heard them out, and I think they're wrong. So, we could get into the nuance of it, about what land is whose and what have you, and there's certainly room for discussion. But what they did was absolutely indefensible. That's what struck me, but that's the politics part I'm trying to get away from. You
Mhm.
know, I'm sickened by what they did. I can't even, I was emailing with a guy who writes for the New Yorker, a guy named Rafi, and I said to him, I was asking him to help me with an article. He said, "Don't you know what's happening right now? Azerbaijan just attacked," and I Googled it, and my heart sank because I was like, this is so unfair and so ridiculous. Listen, there's a case to be made for all sorts of perspectives on that issue, but to simply take the entire area and drive out people who've been there permanently with no option and whatever, they're motivated by a lot of anger over there, and obviously there are a lot of hurt feelings. But that's what sort of struck me the most. I will
Mhm.
say that visually, I think people are missing out who haven't gone to Armenia. I'm always surprised by the number of people who've never been to their
Yeah.
homeland, whether it's Italy or Greece or Israel or Armenia. I always think everybody should just get on a plane and go.
Yeah.
Nothing flies. Was it Mark Twain who said nothing flies in the face of ignorance more than travel?
Yeah.
So
That's a good one. I've never heard that before. Let me ask you in closing, what is the date that we'll be seeing this documentary in New York? Because there was confusion. February 23rd, February 27th, now it's April 11th. I know you will tell me to follow the listing of the PBS in every locale.
I'm gonna have to get that for you, Dina. All right, can you, my
Give me a
publicist?
minute, I'm looking it up.
We'll get you that answer in 1 second.
Yeah, I'm jumping back in. So a WLIW channel 21 is March 20th at 8 p.m. and channel 13 is April 11th at 8:30 p.m. And I'll put this in writing to you via email.
Is there anything in closing?
Look, I think it's important that people support public television and let them know that they want to see more shows like this. We've been
Oh.
able to make 5 Armenian documentaries, and we can make many, many more, hopefully. And the more, the better. I think that that's a win for everybody.
We're really fortunate to have you, Andrew. We really thank you. A standing ovation to you and for the works you have created. Thank you very much.
Thank you.